Hi, I'm Melissa, and this is the Book Break. And today we're talking to Laura Ojeda Melchor, and she has this great new middle book that came out, middle grade reader. So we're going to bring her right in. And her book is called Missing Okalee. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
So I read your book recently, and Missing Okalee, and we'll go ahead and show the image on that because this is just a really cool cover to begin with, but it's a really unique story. I would like you to give us a quick synopsis about your book.
So, Missing Okalee is the story of two Cuban American sisters who are living in Montana in a small town. And they have a tradition where they cross a river that runs right by their house. And they cross that every spring when they're not technically supposed to be in the water. And one year, this tradition goes very wrong. And the book is basically about the aftermath of the incident and how Phoebe copes with that.
Yeah. And, I think that this book was unique in that one, it is for kids, but it takes us through kind of the gamut of emotions and it gives us an opportunity to talk to our kids about some hard things and about some important things like lying and how to handle difficult things. Tell us more about what gave you the idea for this book.
So I actually got the idea when I was quite young. I was 12, and I have a younger sister, and we were visiting the Oregon coast, and there was a sign that said that you needed to stay out of the ocean because of the riptides. And my sister has always been a little bit more like prone to taking risks than I am. So I was worried about her and like what would happen if she went too close to the waves and got sucked under. And I literally went back home. Well, I was staying with my aunt and uncle, and I went back and I wrote the first pages of the story, and it was very short. And I showed it to my sister, and she was like, "Is this about me?" And I was like, "No, don't worry." But that's kind of where I got the idea. But I ended up moving it from the ocean to the river of Montana.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that I really liked about your book is you have the older sister and the younger sister, and the older sister felt like, man, my younger sister's just perfect, and why can't I be more like her? And I think that's something that a lot of kids go through.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I went through. As my sister and I got older, we're very close in age, and she got in trouble less once we hit like high school. And she just seemed easier for my parents to parent, whereas I was the one who took up a lot of their like mental and emotional energy. So I felt like I was not as fun or as good as her, even though they didn't do anything like do anything like that on purpose. It was
Right.
just she was just easy to
Yeah. Yeah,
parent.
well, and I think it's a good point because I know, like, I'm not sure if my brother's gonna watch this episode or not, so hopefully he doesn't get mad. But I mean, even growing up myself, I'm the youngest, and my brother's just one grade above me, even though we're about a year and a half apart. And I remember being younger and going into like sixth grade, and my teacher was like, "Oh, you're David's sister," and I'm
Mm,
like, "No, I'm Melissa," you
yeah.
know. And but then we had the same kind of thing where in elementary school, in middle school, people were like, "Oh, you're David's sister," but then by a
Mm.
certain point in high school, towards the end, somebody said to him one day, "Oh, you're Melissa's brother," and I remember he came home and told me like, now I know what you're talking about. That's never happened to me before. And I was like, see, it's not fun, you
Yeah,
know?
you wanna be your own, like, individual person, not attached to your siblings.
Yeah. And although I do think, and this is something I thought was really interesting. So even though they kind of had this like sibling, hardship going on, they
Mhm.
still loved each other. And I think that's an
Yeah.
important part because even though, I mean, at least even though my brother and I fought like cats and dogs, at the end of the day, if someone was hurting me, he would try to stick up for me.
Yeah, and my sister and I, even though I felt the way I did, like, she really didn't play a part in that. It wasn't her fault, it wasn't anything that she was doing or not doing, and we were very close. And we did have little games and traditions and things like that. So, Yeah, it definitely put some of my own, like, closeness with my own sister on the page.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that I thought was interesting with your book is you hit some hard topics head on. And you're a mom yourself. And
Mhm.
so from a mom's perspective, it opens up an opportunity for us to talk about some of these harder things with our kids. Tell me what you were thinking when you were writing this. Did it worry you at all that, oh no, I might make a kid cry because there's some sad things?
Yeah, when I was writing this, I was kind of going from my perspective as a kid, and as a kid, I was terrified that something bad would happen to somebody in my family. It was something I thought about, like, almost constantly, like, if my parents were slightly late to pick me up from school, I was sure they were dead, and this was from a young age, I was, like, 6, 7 years old, and so I just wrote a book that kind of I would have been interested in as a kid because I was very interested in reading books about loss and death because I wanted to see how people walked through it just in case I had to face it one day. And I think that a lot of kids go through a lot of difficult things. Like we want to keep things, good and light and fluffy for them. But there are a lot of kids out there who are going through some tough stuff. And my son is only 5, he's in kindergarten, but there are kids in his class, that he tells me about. And I'm like, those kids are already going through some really hard things at home. And so this book, I hope, kind of reaches out to them and shows them that they're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah, and with reading some of those hard things in Missing Oakley, I remember thinking, my own family and I mean, honestly, I think we can look at 2020 and 2021 and we can say I don't think there's a single person out there that hasn't gone through something hard in this time frame. And it gives us that chance to talk about it, and it's okay to be sad and
Yeah,
have emotions.
that's right.
Um,
It is.
yeah, and I also liked how you put in there the topic about lying. And a lot of times, and I think this is especially true with children, they kind of get in their head that something really big and bad is going to happen if they lie, but then they kind of put themselves in a downward spiral from that lie. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that when you decided to put that as a part of the book.
Probably that came because I was kind of a little bit of a liar when I was a kid growing up. Like something would happen to my sister and it would be like a little bit my fault, and I would be like, no, I didn't do anything. It was just like self-preservation. And I feel that Phoebe is already so worried about her parents' love and like her parents' acceptance of her that she just knows that if they knew the truth, they would just be livid. But it's at the same time, it's the lie that really messes up like her mom's relationship with her. Not necessarily the truth, but it's the fact that she lied about it that really gets her. So it gets her in more trouble based on something she thought. She thought they would react a certain way, so she lied to protect herself, but maybe it would have been better if she had just told the truth. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it would have been better. But that might be the mom talking in me, I don't
Right?
know.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, how can our viewers go and learn more about you?
So my website, lauraojedamelchor.com, I've got a little bit of behind the scenes stuff up there, and I have a newsletter that you can sign up for. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter. So
Awesome. And we're almost out of time, but the one thing I totally forgot to mention because I really want it is I love in there that we get to learn more about your Cuban culture, and I think that's an important thing for all of us to recognize. If we don't know about a culture, learn more, and
mhm.
and don't let anything hold you back, and it's great to find your community wherever you are.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of based off of my experience in small town Montana. Like I met my husband there and he is Mexican and, white, but his family and our family were close because we were both, Latinx, and so you kind of find each other when you're the only ones.
Yeah. Well, and even with these kids too, they got to celebrate their culture and they got to invite their friends and their neighbors to join with them. So it wasn't like we're just trying to be an exclusive clique. It was, hey, this
Oh
is a
yeah,
loving, welcoming culture. So let's
yeah.
all learn about each other.
Yeah, and my husband's parents used to host a tamale party where his grandma from Mexico and his mom would make like hundreds of tamales, and they literally invited like everyone in our community to their house. So I definitely got that from those experiences, and it was just a highlight of, living there. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love tamales, so
oh yeah,
that sounds fun to me.
it was very
Well,
fun.
thank you so much for being here with us today, Laura.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and to our viewers, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.